Hello, friends, and welcome to another week. Remember, the work week is a fiction. Monday doubly so. You can get rid of them if you really want to. This is Social Justice Alchemy. The rich get richer, the poor get screwed. Doesn't really matter what's going on. Peaceful times, nothing going on. The rich just settle in for the long haul, scamming wealth out of the stock market, financial instruments, cutting wages. The economy tanks? Well, they just shrug all the debt onto other people and walk away with the profits. The economy booms? They pump up the bubble, get out early. There's always money to be made in war. Not just in making weapons and stealing land and resources from the people you liberate. Natural disasters? Tons of money. You cash in on insurance, you buy land cheap, you get government contracts, you buy up debts, you take people's homes. There's always a way to profit off of natural disaster. And all that's if you don't live anywhere near the disaster. It's possible to rake in the cash without ever setting foot near the devastated region. If you do live near the region, it doesn't actually make it any easier to profit off it, but it still helps to be rich. It helps a lot to be rich. Because you can run away. Even if it's an earthquake or volcano or something, you can run after the event. If it's a hurricane, you can see it coming and leave in comfort and style. But if you're poor, you're fucked. You're fucked before, during, and after. It's not a goddamn thing you can do except sit and wait. Sit and watch as everything you own is destroyed. Sit and hope you don't die. Sit and probably die. We live in the modern era with computers the size of buses in outer space monitoring the weather. We have systems capable of organizing relief efforts overnight. We have the most fantastically wealthy society history has ever seen. Assholes on the right love to tout these things as the wonders of capitalism, but then disaster strikes and capitalism does exactly what you expect. It extracts profits and leaves people to suffer and die. There's no profit in helping people. Our society should be able to do better. It definitely could. It would be easy. There's more to humanity than profit. We want to help people. We should help people. We can help people. We just don't. Helping people is un-American. Now, Trump might show up and throw a few rolls of paper towels at people. We're good at photo ops. We're just terrible at compassion. What would the world look like if we acknowledged human needs? What would it look like if we put human concerns ahead of the economy? How would society function if it were built to absorb and work around natural disasters and to minimize suffering instead of maximizing profit? Sure as hell wouldn't look like anything the U.S. has ever done. What's the exact opposite of genocide? All of these thoughts are what I wrote down as I sat and watched my students work through a lab. The last class we'd have for the foreseeable future. And with Hurricane Florence bearing down on us, ready to ruin the coastal Carolinas. It looked like it was going to be a Category 4 or 5 storm, and it was going to run straight in from the ocean. A lot of people were going to lose their homes, everything they own, their jobs, and the Thuglicans wouldn't do a goddamn thing. They'd walk away with all their money and do what they could to help the white people in the Carolinas, and sit there smug in the knowledge that no one is getting abortions while the roads are washed out. And it would be a year before we learned what the death toll was. Fuck the U.S., right? Fortunately, Hurricane Florence wasn't nearly that bad. A Category 1 or 2 hurricane running in from the ocean, not that great. And even a tropical storm is enough to knock down trees, knock over power lines, tear up homes, flood some property. Not great, but it could have been a lot worse. And it turns out, with white people on the mainland at risk, they were willing to do stuff. Like I said, classes were canceled. That's because the governor, at least of South Carolina, went ahead and declared it an emergency, ordered mandatory evacuation of the coast. They made school buses available so that people without cars would still be able to get away. So they did something. But then, this was the mainland U.S., and a lot of Republican voters were at risk. Katrina came in, devastated New Orleans, brown people were fucked. Maria came in, devastated Puerto Rico, Republicans did nothing. Irma came in and hit Houston, Republicans were all over that. Environmental racism, they call it. But, it's more than that. It's natural disasters have a way of bringing the underlying problems to the fore. Because the system is already broken. In this case, what we're looking at is poor people get shunted to the worst areas, the places that get hit hardest by natural disasters. Why? Part of that is, it's just centuries of living on land. We know what good land is. We know what bad land is. We know what areas are likely to get flooded. We know where earthquakes are likely to strike, things like that. So we know where to build and where not to build. So rich people build in the good spots, and the other places have lower property values, so the poor people end up there. Again, it's nothing incredibly deliberate. Nobody set it up this way on purpose. Nobody designed it. It's just the result of the system we have. Rich people get well-constructed homes and property that's less likely to suffer injury from natural disasters. Poor people get shitty construction in places that do get hit by natural disasters, and the result is the rich don't lose their stuff. They're able to accumulate things generation after generation, and poor people lose things over and over and over again. They lose everything. Poor people get the pollution, rich people get the products. Rich people get air conditioning, poor people get climate change. The rich get the treats, the poor pay the price. Always. And this isn't just in the U.S., and it's not just racism. It's not just brown people. Racism made brown people poor, and it keeps them poor, so they end up in the shitty conditions. But it happens to women. It happens to queer folk, trans folk. And it's not just in the U.S. We talk about the global South. They're paying the price. They're bearing the brunt of U.S. fascism overseas. They work as slaves in our sweatshops overseas. And because they don't have the money, they can't really respond with better construction, new construction, as our pollution, as our climate change changes the environment. It's going to be flooding, there's going to be fires, there's going to be epidemics, pandemics, and they won't have the infrastructure in place to deal with these things because they just can't afford it. Natural disasters have a way of turning chronic problems into acute problems. The flaws that are always there, that slowly kill people a little bit every day, are suddenly brought into focus, Natural disasters turn it from a cough into a broken leg sort of thing. Hurricane Florence wasn't that bad. It's still blustering outside my window, but could have been a hell of a lot worse. And the people who would have paid the worst price would have been those least able to pay it, just like always. We can do better. We should do better. Maybe keep that in mind as we move on to the news. ACAB. ACAB. All cops are bastards. That's a motto on the left. And initialism. It's meant as an indictment of the system. Not necessarily that every individual cop is a monster, but regardless of their intentions in becoming police officers, regardless of their motivations while wearing the uniform, they are defending a system that is corrupt, a system that was designed from the beginning to harm and oppress people, to maintain an unjust, a monstrous, in fact, status quo. Now, in England, the first professional police force, the Metropolitan Police in London, are still called bobbies because Sir Robert Peel was his name, put in place the Peelian principles of policing. Cops have to be members of the community, that they're only able to do their job if the people trust them. They're not there to enforce the law. They are not officers of the government. They're not there to keep people down. They're there to help the community. That's not how it was in the U.S. Police forces were established in the U.S. as slave catchers. Happened after Bacon's Rebellion. They were established as a way to separate poor white folk from slaves. The rich realized that they had made a fatal error in allowing poor white folk to get close to slaves. They had oppressed their so-called indentured servants a little bit too much, left them with too little. So they established a barely eking by class. They deliberately segregated their society, separated their white folk from their slaves, except for sheriffs, the overseers, slave catchers. Remember, if you're tempted to think that the police force outside the South wasn't set up that way, well, maybe, maybe not, but remember, the South won the Civil War. They may have lost all the battles, but you know what? The colonies pretty much lost all the battles in the Revolutionary War. We still won the war. After Lee surrendered, there was 10 years of terrorist insurgency. The South won. We may bear the name the United States of America, but we're really the Confederate States of America. They won the insurgency, they won the peace, they won the battle of ideas, the lost cause, the myth that black people were happy in slavery, that they were better as slaves. That permeated up to the North, and the North began to believe it, such that there were lynchings in Minnesota by the time Woodrow Wilson was president. White supremacy became a way of life in the United States. The South won. Obviously, the South was more at home in the South, but the Confederacy won. And their police force was exported. That's why you get shit like cops assaulting and arresting community members, holding an anti-racist potluck on campus of UNC Chapel Hill. This wasn't anti-fascist action for those of you who, for some reason, think that it's bad to be anti-fascist. No, this was a potluck. This was a community coming together to say, no, we're going to be anti-racist. We are opposed to racism, and we're going to have dinner. And the cops came out and assaulted them. Police have been providing protection to racists in the KKK and neo-Nazis all over the country. Proud Boys in Portland, white supremacists in the capital, and of course, Charlottesville, where there was massive violence all around, and the cops, at first, just stood there, let the Nazis do their thing. It wasn't until people started getting seriously hurt that the cops started doing anything, and then they were going after the anti-fascists, not the fascists. You have another example, this time less organized. Police officer in Dallas, at the end of her shift, went into the wrong house, shot and killed the guy who lived there. What are the Dallas police doing? Oh, they're smearing the guy, going after his record his past. Fox News has eagerly jumped in on that as well. And of course, the police officer is claiming that he didn't obey her orders. What the fuck? Remember, people, always obey the random stranger who comes into your home with a gun because they might be a cop who blames you for your own murder. The NRA had an interesting spin on that one. They said that the man would have still been alive if he owned a gun. Maybe the first time the NRA has ever advocated killing cops. Police officer walked into someone's home, shot and killed him. She should have said she smelled pot, then she would have gotten off scot-free. But instead, she said she just walked into the wrong house. That's why she got charged with manslaughter. The Dallas police have been busy attacking the victim's character. Thin blue line. They gotta stand up for their own. And that really why all cops are bastards. Because the system is designed, first, to protect the wealthy, to keep in place the systems of harm, injury, and oppression, and then, very firmly, to protect police themselves as the agents of that system of oppression. Police officers who don't toe the line are drummed out. So you cannot trust police officers who remain police officers. No matter how good their intentions, they will not be allowed to exercise their power and authority on behalf of those intentions. They will only ever be allowed to exercise their power and authority on behalf of the unjust, in fact criminal, system that's already in place. Cops don't take fire hoses and dogs into boardrooms. They don't beat the shit out of bankers. A lot of people are afraid when they see the police. Not because they've done anything wrong, but because they are guilty in the police's eyes. Their lives are at risk when the police are around. Rich white people only feel safe if there are cops on the street. Everyone else feels unsafe when there are cops on the streets. We really have to change that. Let's move on. Hey, did you know that teachers are awesome? Okay, hashtag not all teachers. Obviously, there are teachers out there who are complete and utter shit. But as a group, teachers tend to be kind of awesome. Obviously, we've had, in the recent past, lots of teachers going on strike. I mean, obviously good for them, demanding decent pay, but also hopefully, maybe they'll inspire a labor renaissance. I doubt they will, but you never know. Good teachers inspire. So here's hoping. More recently, the National Science Teachers Association stepped up in a big way, calling on science teachers from kindergarten through high school to emphasize to students that, quote, no scientific controversy exists regarding the basic facts of climate change. Given the solid scientific foundation on which climate change science rests, any controversies regarding climate change and human-caused contributions to climate change that are based on social, economic, or political arguments, rather than scientific arguments, should not be part of a science curriculum. Well, fucking A. The National Science Teachers Association has made lots of statements like this in the past. They're willing to stand up and say, no, the science is in, culture is wrong. They've talked about safety, they've talked about gender equity, they've talked about a lot of things. They've pretty much generally come down on the correct side of issues. They've come down in favor of science. The two biggest ones, obviously, are evolution and climate change these days. And the National Science Teachers Association, I mean, they've been on the right side of those things. They have done good work. They are fighting for truth, even though there are a lot of individual science teachers who are just utter shit. The organization, teachers as a whole, generally, are good. So, good for them. Good for them. Let's move on. And next up, fuck Texas. Texas is a piece of shit
place. I mean, the U.S. is a piece of shit. The South is the worst part of the U.S., and Texas is just, well, it's a big place full of Southerners. The doctor raped a patient, and thanks to a Texas jury, he will not be going to prison. He did lose his medical license. He did lose his job. And the Texas jury did find him guilty of sexual assault, but the jury also gets to decide on the sentence, and they decided 10 years probation, no prison time for Dr. Rapist. Fuck Texas. Fuck this doctor. Fuck anyone who says that rape culture is not a thing. It definitely is a thing, and this jury is a manifestation of it. But what really pisses me off reading this story is what his attorney said during closing arguments. I mean, he's claimed that the encounter was consensual. I mean, he waited until she was drifting in and out of consciousness, and somehow, randomly, who knows how, her call button got unplugged from the wall so she couldn't call for help. But, yeah, it was definitely consensual. Yeah. But what his doctor said during closing arguments was, here we have this Latina woman with her fake boobs that came on to that nerdy middle-aged guy and he lost his mind. Fuck this piece of shit, playing on race and class and gender and all sorts of shit. I won't bother saying her name. Don't want to direct anyone to go after her even a little bit. The attorney. God damn, fuck you. I'm just fucking furious. Alright. This doctor's a piece of shit and he found an attorney worthy of his fuckery. Fuck him. Fuck her. Fuck Texas. Fuck it all. Let's move on. So what's going to happen in November? A lot of people are predicting a blue wave, obviously, because Trump has just been that awful. But you can never lose a bet by predicting that the Democrats can fuck things up. They are really good at fucking up a good thing. I mean, this is long standing. I mean, how the fuck did Dukakis lose in 1988? I would love to... I would love to... No, I don't really want to learn more about that election. I don't really want to go back and dig through the 1988 elections. But, I mean, I would think that after 8 years of Reagan, things had gotten pretty bad. You would think that the Democrats would have had an easy time winning that one, but somehow Dukakis fucked it up. And then, of course, Clinton only won in 92 because, what's his name, Perot came along and split the vote. Yeah? I'm having trouble remembering. I was only 11. But, goddamn. And Al Gore couldn't beat Bush. Kerry couldn't beat Bush. Obama, I'm thinking he only won because the economy crashed. The only way McCain could have won is if there had been a terrorist attack, too. Yeah. So never doubt that the Democrats are capable of... But I think Trump has just been so god-awful. I really do strongly suspect that there will be this big Democratic wave that everyone's predicting. But what will it actually look like? I mean, there have been a lot of weird things happening. I mean, Cynthia Nixon. I don't know too much about her actual politics. I never got any, real big hints that she was this big far left socialist kind of person. I got the feeling she was pretty lefty, pretty liberal, pretty progressive, but not too radical. But she had a pretty goddamn strong showing. She went up against an incumbent, got a third of the vote in the Democratic primary there, going up against Cuomo. And she lost, so no big surprises there. I didn't know too much about her politics, but she struck me as being very... I didn't really hear anything radical or lefty about her, I was trying to say. Whereas actual radical lefties do seem to be carrying the day. First, there's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democratic Socialist, ousted a long-time Democratic incumbent there in the U.S. House. And we have another one, again, out of Brooklyn, Julia Salazar, Democratic Socialist. So I think, here's what I suspect will happen. Don't quote me on this. The Republicans are really going to see the effects of Trump. The fascist base is going to turn out in big numbers. They'll never not vote Republican. Those people are assholes, and they want to be in control of everything. They will always turn out huge. They'll turn out big. No doubts about that. But the suburbanites, they won't. I mean, they're racist and homophobic and so on, but, quieter. They're more quiet about that sort of thing. They're not quite as vicious as the white evangelicals. So they won't turn out in big numbers just because Trump has been so fucking embarrassing for them, is what I suspect. So Republicans are going to see diminished turnout, and they're going to lose a lot of ground there. Democrats, meanwhile, I think they're going to be split. In swing areas, the Democrats are going to run conservative. The Democrats are the conservative party, and they are fighting hard against this socialist surge, right? There are a lot of people seriously invested in not seeing any serious change. And I think that where there is difficulty, the Democrats are going to run hard to the right. Meanwhile, Democratic strongholds are going to see these big socialist surges, is what I'm thinking. And we're going to get a lot of people running hard to the left. So I think the Republicans are going to be seriously weakened, but the Democrats are going to be seriously strengthened, but split. That's what I think we're going to see in November. This is just, based on me fucking around on the internet. I am not, what's his name, Nate Silver. So, don't take this to the bank, is what I'm saying. But I hope the Democrats will win big this November. I hope we're going to see a big surge of socialism making its way into mainstream politics. And I hope the Democrats will just tear Trump's life apart for the next 2 years. I don't expect they'll actually impeach him, but I hope they just rip him to shreds. I hope they expose every single corner of his seedy, seamy, slimy, scuzzy piece of shit life, because the dude is just scum and always has been. And I hope they show that Pence has been fully aware, fully involved with all of this shit, that he has been a willing collaborator, for years now, obviously, fully in the know, because he is a different kind of slime, but oh my god, he's scum, and I hate him too. And I just hope that the Democrats manage to just rip their lives apart for the next 2 years, and show that these people are absolutely pieces of shit. And, we already know they're pieces of shit, but I just want them to show every single little bit of it. Because I have no expectation that they'll impeach. The Democrats are cowards. Conservatives and cowards. So, those are my predictions for November. That's what I see coming from the blue wave. All right. Let's move on. So, time for another video game review. One of the recent games that came up in the Xbox free games with gold thing was Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. I gotta say, I like the gameplay well enough. Running around, being sneaky, that's fine. That's always been my jam. I like open worlds where you get to run around and be sneaky and be a badass ninja dude. It's kind of absurd that it's set in 1982 and the dude only has one hand and the other one is robotic. Whatever. The sci-fi elements. Whatever. I can live with that. It's the first time I've played a Metal Gear game. Back in the Nintendo era, I remember there was a Metal Gear game that I played 5 seconds of and sucked at. But, this is the first time I've actually sat down and played a Metal Gear game, and it's fine. The gameplay is good. The story is not really pulling me in too much. It's kind of weird. I've heard a lot of good things about Hideo Kojima, the guy who wrote the game. So I was expecting big things. It kind of grabbed me from the beginning just because there was these weird supernatural sorts of elements, right off the bat. I had no idea what to expect. I still kind of don't. But there's one thing that really just bugs the ever-loving shit out of me. I absolutely hate it. And I know I am not breaking any new ground here. This is something that people have been aware of and complained about for quite some time. I think the game came out 2-3 years ago, and people immediately noted... Quiet. I'm talking about Quiet. The piece of shit fan service bullshit motherfucking goddamn, I hate it. Quiet. Alright, for those of you who aren't video game fans, Quiet is a character in the game. I haven't, played the full game yet. I'm only a third of the way through, but Quiet is a sort of supernatural thing, maybe, or a robotic thing or something. She's a sniper, and she's naked. Yeah. She wears a very skimpy bikini and torn fishnet stockings. She doesn't talk. She breathes and drinks through her skin. That's the flimsy piece of shit excuse they give for her not wearing clothes. She doesn't have to eat. And oh my god, the camera deliberately so many times focuses on her. Like, you're sitting in a helicopter between missions. At times she'll get up and just bend over to stretch. It's... Oi. If this is typical of Kojima, then I definitely won't be seeking out any other games. And I think it kind of is, because at the very start of the game, before you actually get into the game proper, really, the character is lying in a hospital bed, and, you can barely control the character's eyes. If you don't do anything, you get a face full of nurse chest. I mean, the dude just strikes me as a skeezy, sexist piece of shit. I mean, jiggle physics, okay, if you're not familiar with that term. Talking about breasts and the way they move. Obviously, they put a lot of effort into making sure breasts were bouncy. Yeah, I am not impressed. This is just garbage, really. It's bad writing, it's bad scripting, bad directing, whatever you want to call it. It's not a good way to make a good game. It's a way to cover up not having anything to say. It's wallpapering over the cracks. It's a good way to say, look, it's just a way of saying that you're not good at what you're doing. Something like this. So unless the game really wows me, I'm definitely not going to be seeking out other Metal Gears. I'm just not going to be following Hideo Kojima. That's what I'm saying. The game is, like I said, good gameplay, but if this is what you're offering me in terms of characters and stories, forget about it. I'm just not interested. Let's move on.
And in good news, this one's a little bit less universal. I'm going a little bit more parochial this week. Manafort. Paul Manafort. The ostrich skin jacket motherfucker. He's just a scumbag. A rich scumbag who helped a dictator flip Ukraine. That is to say, he helped Putin in Ukraine before he helped Putin in the U.S. He's a piece of shit. He was convicted, of course, a little while back, but not on all of his accounts. And he has decided that rather than undergo the indignity of a second trial, where he would definitely lose because he only got a mistrial on some of his counts because of a MAGA motherfucker, well, he's decided to cop a plea deal. A plea deal that's handing millions of dollars over, and who knows what else. So this, I think, is unqualified good news, because this guy is yet another nail in Trump's coffin. I think, regardless of what happens in November, Trump is fucked, because Mueller is really goddamn good at his job. Yeah, I know what I said earlier, ACAB, but, wasp landing on a scorpion, that sort of thing. So I think this is nice good news. Trump is probably shitting bricks right now, and it couldn't happen to a nastier person. Alright, that'll do it for this week. I have been your social justice alchemist. Thank you for putting up with me. Be glad I didn't sing. I was thinking about it. If you like what I'm doing here, please like, share, subscribe, give me positive reviews. Those apparently always help. You can follow me not just on the iTunes. You can follow me on YouTube. I have the Social Justice Alchemy YouTube channel. You can leave some feedback there if you like. Or at the blog, surgoshan.blogspot.com. That's surgoshan.blogspot.com. You can leave comments there if you're so inclined. And if you're looking for something a little bit more lighthearted, I have a Dungeons and Dragons podcast I do with some friends. It's hosted by my friend Kevin. He's the DM. It's dungeonsanddebacles.podcast.com. It's a group of us going around being mildly evil as we seek to unleash an ancient abomination to destroy the world. Just a little bit. We have a lot of fun with that one. And with that, I will take my leave. I've been your alchemist, John Brockman. I'll see you next week.